A big reversal in a $7.2 million fraud case in Hennepin County. The judge has thrown out the jury's guilty verdict. This is a case Lou Raguse has been following since the beginning. The judge's actions could make it harder to prosecute state fraud.
How does a unanimous jury verdict die in 3 months? After 14 months of tracking and $9.4 million in suspect Medicaid payouts? And what links empty youth rehabilitation medical kit crates to early morning cash withdrawals across state lines? We'll show you the single evidentiary gap Judge Evelyn Hart saw, why it froze 9 other prosecutions, and how federal analysts connected Minnesota billing to Wisconsin and Illinois hubs holding residues of high-purity fentanyl.
The port director of Traverse City, Michigan, has been arrested for running a Sinaloa cartel smuggling pipeline.
Watch to learn why prosecutors lost the case and why federal agencies stopped chasing individuals and started dismantling the network's logistics backbone instead. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The file looked sealed. 14 months of tracing, 6,700 billing entries unpacked line by line, and a jury that didn't need a dinner break to convict. 3 months later, the whole thing collapsed.
What's happening up there is a disgrace. It's a disgrace. Billions of dollars have been stolen. Billions sent back to Somalia.
The question wasn't whether money moved in suspicious patterns. It was who actually drove the wheel. Investigators started with 3 home care companies that were supposed to bill for aids and therapy visits. On paper, they were separate. In practice, they shared the same suite, the same main line rerouted through different extensions, and even reused intake numbers with a digit flipped. Staff rosters overlapped from scheduler to payroll. The state mapped outbound Medicaid reimbursements to these firms, then watched funds hop across internal accounts and out to vendor banks. Transfers moved in short bursts, often under thresholds that trigger manual review. Nights ran quiet. Then right before sunrise, withdrawals hit multiple branches in the same hour, followed by a fresh wave of reimbursements backfilling the balance by noon. The prosecution told a clean story. The defendant owned, hired, and signed. The money path looked like a loop. Bill, reimburse, transfer, extract. But the defense sketched a second path inside the same lines. Layered managers controlled passwords. A back-office contractor handled account access. Vendor authorities sat with a logistics consultant who never put his name on corporate filings. The same facts shifted meaning depending on who had the keys on a given day. The granular mechanics mattered. Medicaid dollars landed. Within 20 minutes, a short hop transfer sent funds to a sub-account labeled operations. Another move pushed money to a vendor bank with recurring memos. Supplies, transport, temporary staffing. Cash came out between 1 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., often in mirrored amounts across 2 branches 10 miles apart. Those hours lined up with transport windows for overnight carriers and dawn warehouse opens. When auditors laid the withdrawals against lease records, the timestamps matched keycard entries at storage spaces that weren't listed as company assets.
Julie, it's extremely rare for a judge to reverse a jury's verdict in a criminal case. Jurors I spoke to today told me it was not a difficult decision to find Abdi Fattah Youssef guilty in a Medicaid billing scheme, and they're surprised by this development.
Shared addresses and recycled phones flagged a shell-like build. That structure muddies who controls what. The more overlap, the easier it becomes to argue that authority diffused through layers, that a different hand could have queued transfers while the owner played a public role. It looks coordinated. It also gives the defense room to point at shadows inside the same office. The case turned on one line in the judge's order. Judge Evelyn Hart wrote that the state hadn't ruled out someone else inside orchestrating the scheme. The spending patterns, the cash withdrawals, and luxury assets were troubling, she said. But they did not answer the control question. The issue wasn't whether a scheme existed. It was whether the named defendant ran it in practice, day to day, click to click. Research on complex fraud prosecutions shows why this happens. Pattern evidence convinces a jury that a system is dirty. But when organizations build plausible deniability into their structure, separate LLCs, contracted back offices, shared digital credentials, the direct link between a person and a command can blur enough to fail on appeal. Circumstantial proofs stack high and still miss the moment of control needed to survive judicial review. That was the single gap.
The attorney for Mr. Youssef, Ian Burrell, sent me a statement today that says, in part, Judge West's ruling affirms what we have maintained from the beginning, that our client, Mr. Youssef, was wrongfully accused and did not commit fraud or racketeering. The Attorney General's office filed an appeal this afternoon, so the Minnesota Court of Appeals will take a second look at this decision. Julie.
So, Lou, did Mr. Tamburino, did he have any kind of emotional reaction? And this is pretty stunning. This does not happen.
Investigators could show a choreography of transfers and pulls. They couldn't conclusively show the defendant's fingers on the choreography at the relevant times. The verdict evaporated. Prosecutors froze 9 similar cases that leaned on the same model and trimmed charges in several more to avoid the same fall. If the paper couldn't nail the mastermind, the feds asked a different question. They widened the lens and listened to the logistics. Where did the Dawn cash go? And why did it move in lockstep with leases, manifests, and routes no clinic needed? Why did empty youth rehab medical kit crates map to truck schedules and Dawn withdrawals across 2 states? Investigators stopped arguing about signatures and started stacking clocks. They lined up transaction timestamps against storage leases, bill of lading entries, and regional carrier manifests. Debit pulls at 2:11 a.m. Storage doors pinged open at 3:22. A leased box truck left a Bloomington lot at 3:48, crossed the river before 4:20, and checked in at a Wisconsin hub right as a second cash draw hit an Illinois branch. The paper flow and the freight flow started to rhyme, and once the timelines overlapped, the routes did too. At first, the crates looked harmless. White labels, standard dimensions, barcodes that matched a vendor catalog for rehab kits. But the serials told a different story when they were traced across purchase orders and returns. The numbers cycled through too fast for clinics that size. Capacity estimates based on crate volume and pallet counts suggested rotation well above what any youth program would consume. Swabs pulled from crate seams carried residues that did not match bandages or saline. They lined up with controlled substances listed on staging sheets from out-of-state distribution points. The warehouses made the scale plain. In 3 sites, they logged 612 crates. Most sat empty or showed powder traces under UV and on adhesive joins. A handful did carry legitimate supplies, which gave the catalog cover. Forklift paths and dock scans showed throughput that fit multi-ton movement over rolling quarters. Inbound pallets arrived late night. Outbound pallets left before 5 a.m., often after short dwell times that matched quick repack and load cycles. Not clinic supply management. The money cadence tracked the freight. Cash came out before sunrise in matching blocks. Then trucks hit Wisconsin and Illinois hubs on a loop that repeated every 10 to 14 days. Those loops synced with vendor invoice dates and payroll cycles that washed new reimbursements into the primary accounts. When payroll cleared, a second wave of transfers pushed money to subs and overseas banks, then reversed through grant and vendor labels to reappear as carrier payments and equipment leases. Lab work cut through guesses. Samples from crate liners and floor drains tested for high-purity fentanyl and staged narcotics used to build pills and patches. Based on residue concentration, crate volume, and the observed turnover, analysts estimated up to 6.2 tons processed through the staging points over 2 years. Not stored at once, processed. The flow was the thing, and the cadence matched the banks and the trucks. Follow the money far enough, and it looped the map. Nearly $124 million rotated across 4 years through the primary firms, their subs, and related overseas accounts. Funds exited as vendor fees, re-entered as grants, then crossed borders as training and equipment lines. Same amounts, same month-end timing, different memos. The pattern held even when one account shut down. Another picked up the beat within a week. That is where the federal posture shifted. Instead of chasing a single signer, they aimed at the ecosystem. Treasury froze 312 accounts tied to the rotation, cut vendor lines so invoices could not settle, and flagged carriers for route reviews that forced reassignments and delays. Capacity, not just people, became the target. If the trucks could not roll and the accounts could not clear, the backbone bent. By the end, you'll see why the White House's push against transnational criminal organizations hinges not just on power projection, but on a covert logistics brain at sea that keeps helicopters flying and special operators moving without a broadcast AIS ping.
Yeah, he leaned towards the idea that this was kind of a one-off and that it would have a good chance at appeal. But the worry is that there's so many other cases just like it where somebody's in the exact same position as Mr. Yusuf but is charged with fraud